I gotta ask, and like this, it's just so striking to me. Now you're a black person from like an all black area, and you wouldn't want like an all black police force. But I think all the white people here, I think we could very much get behind that. And I can't help but wonder, is that because this system itself was not meant for black people and they don't do well in it, regardless of white people's presence?
I think that part of the problem is that our education, um, our family education it's so horrible. Like, for example, one thing that really attracted me to this whole situation is that everybody knows their lineage, their history, where they come from. And what makes me different from other black people is that I also know where I come from. I'm also very aware of my ancestors, my history, stuff like that. And so I have a very difficult time connecting with black people who are first generation here, second generation here, and or a lot of people who are mixed up. They don't know where their people came from or anything like that. So I think it's a problem of there's a lot of people who don't know anything about their ancestors. They don't know anything about their people, where they came from. Is this the
same issue that's going on in sub-Saharan Africa, where all of these countries took on like European-style governments, but then they were left behind, and now they're kind of cargo culting that sort of government, expecting it to just happen because you have the uniforms, you have the building, but it's just not.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing?
It's a huge problem.
Is it the same thing that's going on in America with American blacks? Is that the same idea?
Yeah, it's the same problem. I mean, I think that a lot of people just literally don't know anything about their history. And if all this is sort of like where the Hoteps come in, because if your learning of black history comes from McGraw-Hill or Houghton Mifflin or whatever you learn in school, it's completely fraudulent. It's completely fake. It's devoid of any understanding of anything. And when you try to tell people, like, for example, I got myself in a lot of trouble. I always get myself in a lot of trouble with the regular blacks, but I'm like, okay, Frederick Douglass is basically Obama. Like, they're the same. People are like, what do you mean? This and that. I'm like, well, like Frederick Douglass, was he the most photographed man in the 18th century? Why? Makes no sense. And I mean, I went back and looked at his story. I said, this story makes no sense. And he's a philanderer, a huge philanderer he was. And he managed to get across to Britain, and he somehow managed to get the British to pay his guy to free him. Like, the story is completely insane. So I said, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King Jr., and Obama are the same person. Got myself in a lot of trouble. And I said, Harriet Tubman was a spy. She didn't free no black people. She just took them from one master to the next. And I get myself into trouble all the time, but
wow,
it is pretty base.
Wow. Well, this is holy shit! I thought I loved Harriet Tubman.
Wow. Well, this is what Kanye West was talking about that.
Exactly.
Damn.
He got excoriated, but that's what I mean. People have these. You need heroes, but the way that they have portrayed these heroes are bad for us, because they're not real. They're not based in reality. Especially like Harriet Tubman, she was a Union spy. She probably was a British spy too, and she got severance pay. And then when she hired people, she didn't actually hire like black people. It was crazy. Like, the more you start actually looking to their actual documents, their real, firsthand accounts and stuff like that, you're like, wait a second, this history is just like the civil rights movement. I can't talk about the civil rights movement. I can't talk to anybody in my family. Okay, let me start. If I start on the civil rights movement,
the march on Washington was co-opted.
Oh, well, MLK was co-opted. MLK was a CIA agent.
Wow.
Malcolm X was a CIA agent.
Now you've gone too far. You've gone too far with Malcolm X.
Is this true?
What?
He's my nigga.
There's pictures of Malcolm at the CIA training. Martin too. There's information. But this is the point. When you have your history have built up all of these avatars that you cannot even say, I don't like that Martin Luther King Jr. was a philanderer. That's a huge thing. You can't even say it. He slept with all these women. Nobody could talk about it at all whatsoever. So this is a huge problem in the Black community because we're carrying a history that's a completely fake history. And so when you have people who are centered around a completely fake history and a completely fake retelling of it for the purpose of controlling, then how can you ever relate to a white person? Like, my ancestors were Black. I had native Blacks. Then my great grandmother was half white and half Indian. Then I think my great grandfather was, I have a bunch of people, but I know that I have Irish in my family. So what am I? And most Blacks who are descendants of slaves come from Irish people too, because the Blacks, like where I'm from, the Blacks, the whites, and the Indians, the whites were being the Irish. They all lived together in longhouses, not like the slave. I mean, it's just, the history is completely, it's just not told right. It's just not told right. And so you can't have people saying, oh, I hate white people, but guess what? Like, you're whoever was white. So do you like hate yourself? Like, or you hate the Indians, but you were Indian too. Like, which one is it? Like, you, or I hate America, but like, you built America. So which one is it? Like, this is the problem with the Black community. There's no way to actually identify with who you actually are, because the way the history is taught is so bad. So I'm hoping that was a good answer for Theodore. But yeah, I don't want all the government out. Just leave me alone.
Incredibly good information. Everybody should hear that stuff.
Yeah,
we're gonna clip this. We're gonna clip this, and also, Sophia, I really think that the colleges are going to be destroyed soon. There's not going to be any more universities. Instead, you should be one of the rising stars of history lessons that, you know, thousands of kids are going to be listening to. You know, like,
we're working on that.
That's
That is one of the things we are working on. I come from a family of historians. My grandfather is a historian, and so we have a lot of our family information. My mom has, so we have a lot of information. And I have been like going back and looking at some of the older, they call them Negro history almanacs, and they have a lot of accurate information in there. It's like, what happened really was in the 70s, as far as Black history education is concerned, a group of socialists got together and decided they were going to co-opt Black history. And so what they did was they started falsifying the documents with the slaves of the slave ships to make it look like more slaves had come from West Africa to America than actually did, because all the other there are many other historical accounts that say Blacks were already here, which the Hoteps, that's a tenet. We know we were here. Like, how you gonna take my country from me? That's why I have so many flags in my room. If you follow me on Twitter, I got 3 American flags in my room. I'm probably about to get at least 2 more. Like, because I was here. You're not gonna take America from me. Well, you can send me back to where I came from. What does that even mean? So there's this group of socialists that literally took over Black history. They took over the way that it was taught. They introduced this critical race theory as a way of blaming white people for everything. And so ever since then, you've just had basically a complete rewriting of Black history all the way back. And the only way you can figure it out is if you go back and you read documents directly from like a Booker T. Washington or some of the other ones, not W.E. Du Bois, because he was a socialist too. So you have to go back and sort of read the original, the older documents. And that's one reason why they wanted to remove cursive. They want to remove reading in general. They want to, now when Black history is taught, I don't know, I'm sure none of you have kids, but now when Black history is taught, it starts with Obama.
What?
I've never, yes.
Wow.
What? I promise you, it starts with Obama.
Can you bring us some of these books?
Why? What
I
good
wanna
things
see this.
for Obama
This is amazing.
He became the president.
He became the president.
Round of applause, please. Everybody clap for Obama.
Starts. And they say a little bit about MLK, and that's all you get in Black history is MLK, the whitewashed version, and Obama and Michelle and Oprah.
Well,
and the socialists. That's all you get. You get no actual, like, if they talk about Booker T. Washington, who really his ideas would solve so many problems in this country, you have no idea.
Who was the most recent like Black figure who should be like taken serious like along these lines? What's the last one that Black people had?
The most recent.
Whoopi Goldberg.
To be honest, I don't particularly care for any of these people because a lot of them are involved in this pedophilia, satanic stuff.
I thought it ended at Malcolm X, but you X-pilled me, and now I don't know what to think.
I'm sorry.
You don't
No,
you don't like Michelle Obama?
Who asked me that?
Me.
I'm sorry.
Michelle named Michael.
Michelle
named Michael.
Myself.
She did have a nice rose garden though, right? Like I do agree that the new rose garden does not look.
Well,
as
it's
good
accessible before, and I also made a commentary about this rose garden thing because as a person who has worked bar staff, wait staff, all that type of stuff, it's now accessible. Before, can you imagine trying to roll tables and chairs and all this stuff out there? Now they have a ramp where actual handicapped people like Vanilla Bae, Madison Cawthorn can wheel his wheelchair out there and be a part of the party, which I think is fair. He should be. So yeah, I think that I'd have to do some looking to see who is actually legitimate right now. I think Robert Smith is probably one of the people. He had paid off all of those kids whatever, and he does a lot of investment, but I don't necessarily care for these new blacks in general, especially the ones that pretend like
There's
What
people
do you
in
think
the
about
chat.
Frederick Douglass?
You missed my Frederick Douglass rant. Okay, so
Oh, I did.
I'll give you just a little piece of the Frederick Douglass rant.
Yeah, give me the Douglass pill.
Here's the problem with Frederick Douglass. He was somehow the most photographed person of the 17th century, which makes no sense. He's more photographed than Abraham Lincoln. That makes absolutely no sense. So starting with that little piece of information, then you can see his story sounds like it's completely fraudulent. Let me just talk about one piece, how he learned how to read. So somehow, and he's from where I'm from. My people are from Eastern Shore of Maryland. So this is like a personal thing to me. So you mean to tell me somehow he goes from Tyaskin, which I know where that is very clearly. He somehow goes from there out to Baltimore, and somehow the racist Baltimore boys in the street, because Baltimore is quite racist, they taught him how to read. That makes no sense. None whatsoever. Like, we could just stop right there. Like, no way that these boys taught him how to read. No.
We got some people in the chat. They're saying that maybe Dave Chappelle or Kanye or Farrakhan.
I love the comment. I love the comment of Buff, who said
Dorner, I like.
Buff's comment is the best. He said Sean King, the only black philosopher of our time.
Next,
okay.
Talcum, of course. Sean King, you mean Talcum X?
This at the moment that Farrakhan started talking about Scientology, I was definitely off that.
The problem with Farrakhan is that he's pushing an agenda, the Muslim agenda. So me personally, being a Christian of Christian faith history, Amen. I have a problem with people pushing that particular lifestyle, because if you know any of these women who are in the Nation of Islam, they don't want them to do anything. I got a problem with that because my grandmother did everything. My great grandmother did everything. So I got a huge problem with all of that. My grandmother on the Eastern Shore side, she will shoot you with her gun while drunk. Won't care, bury you out back and keep moving. This woman was no joke. Like, I don't really like this whole I must submit to this man and I have to stay back out the way. I don't like